This is the real Independence Day for Africans at home and abroad, established in 1920 by the Right Excellent Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and all of the Africans that came from around the world. It established the first convention for African people working for sovereignty for Africans. 1920, brothers and sisters, the first convention 100 years ago. So tonight we are going to revisit, not only continue to celebrate the 100 years, but as our President General always reminds us, build into the next 1 to 100 years and 500 years of a positive plan to carry out the works, not only of the Right Excellent Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, but the mandates of the government from 1920 all the way forward. And we know today, African people, we really need to celebrate our independence. African Liberation Day, all of these days, in fact, every day should be Africa Day. But without any further ado, Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World, the principles of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Tonight, what we're going to do is to read the preamble. I'm going to read the complaints and after reading each one, turn it over to the President General to talk a little bit about it, where it related to what happened then in history, where it is for us today, because that's very important. These Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World, as you will find out, are very critical for us today even, and were certainly critical then. And had we took up the mantle the right way and carried out the right works within the past 100 years of following the message of self-determination and self-reliance, we'd be further off, but that's past. We're going forward. We're gonna pick up where was left off by our great ancestors. The preamble: be it resolved that the Negro people of the world, through their chosen representatives in convention assembled in Liberty Hall and City of New York, United States of America, from August the 1st to August the 31st, in the year of our Lord, 1920, protest against the wrongs and injustices they are suffering at the hands of their white brethren, and state what they deem their fair and just rights, as well as the treatment they propose to demand of all men in the future. We complain that nowhere in the world, with few exceptions, are Black men accorded equal treatment with white men, although in the same situation and circumstances, but on the contrary, are discriminated against and denied the common rights due human beings for no other reason than their race and color. We are not willingly accepted as guests in the public hotels and inns of the world for no other reason than our race and color. PG?
Today, although circumstances seem to be different, if your credit score and your cash is not different, then those same situations exist. You see, one of the things we had to recognize is that the European and the white world did not want to see us as their equal. They wrote that in the constitutions of America, saying you were 3/5 of a man. So they did not intend to give you said rights, because if they did, in the world, you would have changed the dynamics. So here, as we look at this and understand that our acceptance in public locations, although yes, you can stand up and demand certain things and they will afford it to you, it is afforded to you with a disrespect and a disregard to your rights. And what I need other people to understand is we have rights, and our rights are determined by what we do and who we are. And what I mean by what we do, we are people who have created some of the greatest nations in the world, first for ourselves and then for everybody else. Respect our efforts, but respect our energy, and recognize that we are the sons and daughters of those great men and great women. Even those you whipped, we are their sons and daughters.
Okay. Second complaint, and we're gonna hear from others. We want to get through these 12 complaints, which are critical, leading into the 54 declarations. In certain parts of the United States of America, our race is denied the right of public trial accorded to other races when accused of a crime, but are lynched and burned by mobs. And such brutal and inhumane treatment is even practiced upon our women. Whoa, PG.
we can look at what's taking place in the world today. I believe the sister's name was Brianna. She's the most recent sister who was executed by this system because they knocked down her door without telling her that they would come and shot through the house multiple times and took her life. We just had brother in Wisconsin
Mhm.
shot 7 times in the back, reaching for whatever, but 7 times in the back, followed by the police officer in disregard to his human rights, let alone his manly rights. You have George Floyd, just to name 1 or 2. But let's go back to George Jackson. We can go back. I mean, we have lists of men and women historically and in our own families.
Absolutely.
So that has not changed. But because we deal with a systematic racist system, what they've done is change how it looks.
Yeah. Good point. All right, Rick, excellent. Let's keep moving. 3, that European nations have parceled out among them and taken possession of nearly all the continent of Africa, and the Africans, they say natives, are compelled to surrender their lands to aliens and are treated in most instances like slaves. Whoa, wait a minute, let me make sure I'm finished that one.
There you are.
Yeah, that's it. That was a life sentence, but a powerful statement there.
Absolutely. And listen, see, again, we seem to think that systemic racism is gone. You know, we did some stuff, we got some civil rights, we did some marches, we did some movements, and we think we it's changed, it's gone. No. What systemic racism does, which is why we need a plan that's both for 100 years in development of the government and a 500-year plan for the development of the race, because we have to be prepared for the changes that Europeans will make as we move forward. Every time you make a step, they take 10 steps in preparation for your next step. So we have to be prepared 100 steps behind in front of theirs, so that when they make a step, they're already behind us. Right now, we still kind of coming up short, because we're coming up, we're angry, and we banding with white folks and say, oh, let's get to the systemic racism. Again, they plan for that. They plan for theirs to be out there. They plan for that human juggernaut. But at the same time, you don't see Bill Gates not trying to inoculate the continent of Africa with a vaccine that we know will be detrimental to his health. We don't see that. See, so let's understand how this works for us.
Okay. No, okay, I hear you, sir. Moving right along. Number 4, in the southern portion of the United States of America, although citizens under the federal Constitution, and in some states almost equal to whites in population, are qualified landowners and taxpayers, we are nevertheless denied all voice in the making and administration of the laws, and are taxed without representation by the state governments, and at the same time compelled to do military service in defense of this country. Man, I'm from DC, so
I knew that was coming. I'm surprised Dr. Chinzerua didn't unmute her mic and say I'm from St. Croix, and we got the same situation. See,
check that out. Okay.
See. So here, let's just for a moment take that on. That was a complaint 100 years ago.
Check it out.
100 years ago, they complained because you didn't have a right to vote. Now I know people say voting don't make no difference, but it made a difference to them, so it should make a difference to us. But yet and still today, we are denied the right to vote and required to do everything you are required to do 100 years ago, when you weren't given the rights to do anything. You know, this European was astute and tapping in on our character. Because see, what allowed this to continue is the character of people of African descent. You see, from being the snatched from home, raised in a foreign culture, given a foreign religion, given foreign views, and then finding your root in your soul, because you did. You found your humanity, and our humanity is older than this time that we live now. And that humanity, although it is our blessing, is also our weight.
Yes, sir. I got you. And I know, well, anyway, I'm gonna move forward because I mean, whoa, these are just the complaints, okay? 5, on the public conveniences and common carriers in the southern portion of the United States, we are Jim Crowed,
The audio.
compelled,
Here's your friend.
Yes.
we
Go
are,
ahead.
we are Jim Crowed and compelled to accept separate and inferior accommodations and made to pay the same fair charge for first-class accommodations. And our families are often humiliated and insulted by drunken white men who have habitually passed through the Jim Crow cars going to the smoking car. Wow.
Again, it speaks to the racism in America. And let me take that a step further. Whereas you may be able to pay for a first class ticket on an airplane today, and you may be able to pay for a special ticket on the train, and you may not think you experience these indignations. You may not think you do, but you do. And you experience them from not upper middle, but the regular old normal white guy that's now handling your bags, who tosses your bags and throws your bags, who disrespects you, and you, being of high moral character, have a tendency to overlook it. We have to recognize that, yes, this complaint for 1920 was 100% on mark. But when we look about the world today, you have to recognize that you drive along highways and you get pulled over driving while black. You go to get on the airplane, they check your ID 2 or 3 times. You go to get on the train, you face the same kind of, and not all of us and not every time. But it doesn't take all of us and every time for the situation to still be intact. Because again, they change how it looks so that you don't see it, yet it still exists. It's called racism.
Wow. 6, the physicians of our race are denied the right to attend their patients while in public hospitals of the cities and states where they reside in certain parts of the United States. Our children are forced to attend inferior separate schools for shorter terms than white children, and the public schools and the public school funds are unequally divided between the white and colored schools.
And I think we can technically say we know that exists today. And some call it the charter school education. Some still have private schools, recognizing that since those of us who pay taxes, whether you have representation or not, both my sister and my brother, you ain't got representation, but you're still paying them taxes. They get divvied up based on the student population in the school. Black schools in the Black communities of America still wanting and are falling down because they're still 99 years old. They're still old. They don't have the conveniences that they should have. We still suffer. Our books are still old. Every now and then we get some new books, but when you get new books, it's telling the wrong story. So they have to do a reprint. You see, so again, I will say one more time, systemic racism changes its face, just does not change its attitude.
Okay, 7, we are discriminated against and denied an equal chance to earn wages for the support of our families, and in many instances are refused admission into labor unions, and nearly everywhere are paid smaller wages than white men. Wow, you want to comment on that one?
Oh, I would not fail to miss that. You know, what's so interesting is now to get into a union, they make you go and take 2 courses in college so that you can have an associate degree in order to get into a union. Hey, most unions in America are run by white men, period. Not even white women, run by white men, so that they put barriers up against black men. If you notice the highway constructions, what are black men generally doing? Holding up the signs. Go slow, stop. That's what you're doing. You're not demonstrating your skills and your ability. If you look about your cities and you see infrastructure work being done, count the number of black men that are giving orders opposed to the number of white men that not only giving orders are earning that $20, $30 an hour as they do the digging. You see, again, as we, even in the city of Philadelphia, where there's a mandate that black people have to have a certain percentage of the jobs, the percentage of the jobs they get when it comes to unions, is flipping the sign, go slow, stop. Okay, you can go again. Okay, see, so that's not only a travesty, because they wouldn't be able to do what they did if black men had not invented the constructions and also the pipe laying skills that they have. And not, excuse me, when I say black men, I'm not excluding black women's role. Let me clarify that right now, because we couldn't be nowhere without the African warrior queen, for real, for real. And yes, they laid pipes. I know a sister that has her own construction company. She's a welder. She does it, and she says categorically, I do anything and everything anybody else can do. I understand that. And so I am not taking away from my sisters. I say black men, my apologies. I will henceforth say all of us, for real, the African woman, the African warrior queen has done as much and deserves greater than we do.
Rule 8. In the civil service and departmental offices, we are everywhere discriminated against and made to feel that to be a black man in Europe, America, and the West Indies is equivalent to being an outcast and a leper among the races of men, no matter what the character attainments of the black men may be.
And so again, to flip that, that's black women, black men, because America would have never got on the moon without black women.
Right.
I mean, they showed the movie, The Hidden Figures, but who those hidden figures was them 4 black sisters. And then they showed you the computer sisters that was in those rooms that was doing all that math. So real for real, let us understand that they took it upon themselves to eliminate us from jobs that they felt would give us the skills in order to establish our own government, because you need civil service in order to do that. However, our women and our men have bridged that gap. Our men slower than our women, because our men first persecuted our women when they should have held them upright. That's truth. That's history. We ain't gotta like it. Brothers, take it on the chin and stand hell up and be a man about it and say, I apologize, because we need to do that. But it could not have been an example if civil service. Check out India. What they built in India was a civil service that they control. What they built in Africa was civil servants that they control. What they built here was civil service that they control. What they could not control was that African warrior queen spirit who said, not on my watch. We will build nations and move forward.
9. In the British and other West Indian islands and colonies, Negroes are secretly and cunningly discriminated against and denied those fuller rights of government to which white citizens are appointed, nominated, and elected.
You know, in America, we say we don't need to vote, but you do. But in the British and the other West Indies and those particular colonial islands, I think we need to make sure we understand that that secret was not just secret there. It was secret here. They tried to hide it, but here it was more blatant racism, Jim Crow laws. You got to know every word in there. I don't know one white person in the 21st century that knows every word in the dictionary. But yet my ancestors were denied the right to vote because they didn't know every word in the dictionary. What kind of hypocrisy is this? Let me also say this too. Since governments are built not just on the political realm of leadership, but on how it operates on behalf of the people, the civil service is the wheels to turn that makes government operate. If we, as RC 2020 and the UNIA ACL, don't build a strong civil service, we will not be able to function as a government.
Wow. 10. That our people in those parts are forced to work for lower wages than the average standard of white men and are kept in conditions repugnant to good civilized taste and customs.
True to this day.
Mm-hmm.
True to this day.
11, that the many acts of injustices against members of our race before the courts of law in the respective islands and colonies are of such nature as to create disgust and disrespect for the white man's sense of justice.
That's because the white man didn't have a sense of justice. He didn't have one. What he had was a sense of entitlement, and he believed that he should rule the world. So he didn't believe in justice. He believed in just us. Here's your justice. I don't like you. I don't want you to achieve nothing, so I'm gonna put you in jail. They locked my grandfather up for 10 years on the chain gang, and he didn't do nothing but go home to see his mama buried. Hello.
12, and the last one. Against all such inhumane, unchristian, uncivilized treatment, we here and now emphatically protest and evoke the condemnation of all mankind.
In the 1920s, the dominant religion was Christianity. And therefore, they used that rule to say to the white Christian, you are so wrong that we condemn you based on your rule. If we were to make this same statement today, we would make this statement based on our African cultural, religious values and principles, including all of those things, Ma'at being number one and Jehudi being part of that whole system of development. And we would condemn the Europeans' actions based on justice, not just us, but justice. And since they have not known or practiced justice, we will be giving them a course in proper human treatment. And since we won't be vengeful, they'll make out all right.
So we're doing good. Now we're moving right ahead. Now you've heard 12 complaints, brothers and sisters. Thank you, sir. PG, and you handle those very well. And in fact, I heard not a lot of just yesterday, I heard a lot of today and a lot of tomorrow. You got to address what you were sharing. But anyway, in order to encourage our race all over the world and to stimulate it to overcome the handicaps and difficulties surrounding it and to push forward to a higher and grander destiny, we demand and insist on the following declarations of rights. 1, be it known to all men that whereas all men are created equal and entitled to the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and because of this, we, the duly elected representatives of the Negro peoples of the world, invoking the aid of the just and almighty God, do declare all men, women, and children of our blood throughout the world free citizens. I'm gonna repeat that. Free denizens, and do claim them as free citizens of Africa and the motherland of all Negroes. Woo! That's number 1, y'all.
And, you know, and justly so, because building the government.
Yes, sir.
So check this out. Building the government for African people of the world speaks exactly to this very first one. Since you say you heard not so much history, let me do history. In the 1920s, the continent of Africa was colonies under colonial rule by whites who had carved it up, with the exception of Ethiopia. Africa in and of itself was carved all up, ruled by white men and proclaimed to be civilizing the African people who didn't need civilizing because culturally and systematically we were already civilized. Just recognizing that we were already civilized. So since we were already civilized, what did they really do? What they really did was take a chance to say, okay, you don't wear clothes like I do. You don't cover up like I do. We in Africa. I don't have to be in cold Europe. So they wanted to change that. So what Garvey and the representatives of African people of the world are saying then is that we declare Africa a free and independent nation, and based on our rights and our culture and our civilization, get off my damn neck.
Now, President General, while we go through these rights, I want you to take your time and allow. Well, I see you getting your light together. Well, you know, we slipping into we dark into the light. You know how we
Yes, sir.
you come up with and this young brother had the audacity to pull me up on this thing the other day that I've been being pulled up on in years, and he said, you know, there would be no light without darkness, bruh. I said, you ain't lying. Out of the darkness comes the light. I said, you got to come here and tell me, how did you come to that?
And there would be no white people if not for black people. Check that out.
Look, brother, melanin, charcoal, darkness. You know what I'm saying? So anyway,
that's right. Move on.
All into that, but praise the red, the black, and the green. I tell people to eat watermelon and don't forget the black seed. You know what I'm saying? That's the key. You know, But anyway, we just had to put a little. I was getting.
Yeah, you got to do that.
I was giving PG time to get his stuff together over there because he's kicking out so much blacktricity.
Yeah, I knocked the light over. Yeah, what can I say? So if you see me, you want to know what happened. I hit the light.
So, but I want to get some other comments in on that one. And
Go right ahead.
And if need be, my sisters, if any of you wish to respond to that one in terms of how you see it, whatever you want to share, actually. And if you want me to read it again, I will. Do I need to read it again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
1, be it known to all men/women, people with where we are today in 2020, that whereas all men and women are created equal and entitled to the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and because of this, we, the duly elected representatives of the Negro peoples of the world, evoking the aid of the just and almighty God, do declare all men, women, and children of our blood throughout the world free denizens, and do claim them as free citizens of Africa, the motherland of all Negroes.
Come on, family.
Whoever wants to speak on that, Dr.
I will offer some very choice words, because when we speak of any type of engagement like that, it is so 21st century that we have no choice but to recognize that history definitely repeats itself, and it doesn't always repeat itself in the way that it should. So this just reinforces that the same concerns, the same dynamics, the same social disorder, it just manifested, of course, differently for that time in the early 20th century, that we're still seeing the same ramifications now. And we see it, as has been already explicated, within the 48 contiguous, within Europe, Canada, Caribbean, Central and South America, India, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Australia. It's around the globe, wherever our ancestral African personage remains, which is everywhere, period. So, this is a time for us to move in the direction towards African fundamentalism escalated. We don't have a lot of time to be having this conversation another 100 years from now. So between the last 100 years where they had to make this declaration and 2020, we should be moving in a vibration where it is a decree. Yes. Notice that I use a slightly different term, because the Papal Bull of 1453 and 1490 this, and so they still use them now because they were decrees. So we have an opportunity to make some revisions, but to make the declaration moving forward a decree, so that we don't have this same conversation 100 years from now.
Ooh, Ashe. Mama Mary, you want to add anything?
I want to say that as long as we continue not to know ourselves, man, know thyself. And we need to teach our own children. We have been turning our children over to the enemy for hundreds of years. And we continue to do that. We will continue to get the same result. Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results is called insanity. So we want changes. We're going to have home schools, charter schools, African independent schools, after schools. We're going to have to work it every way we can. And we're going to have to teach our parents to be teachers, because our parents are first teachers and always teachers. Because once they leave our classroom, they go back home. And whatever environments are at home teaches the children more than we can teach them in a 4 or 5 hour day. So we have to concern ourselves with the whole child and the whole family and the whole community.
Okay.
We have to look at it like once upon a time they used to look at teachers in such a way. As a matter of fact, it was against the law for teachers to be married, because teachers had to devote their entire lives to the community,
Right.
and
So-
to the school. So we have to find a way to get that commitment back.
I hear you. So we're going to move on to 2, but we know that from what we've just heard, it's critical for us to look at these and what was meant then, but apply them to where we are today, and that,
Yes.
and go forward. And that's critical. Anyway, I'm gonna read the number 2, and I'm gonna let the PG speak to that, and then we're gonna go back around again, because we're gonna try to get through all of these tonight, by the way, y'all. So, you know, let's stay focused on each declaration. But certainly we know that we got a right to decree
Yes.
and to advance and make these a reality in everybody's mind. See, that well, anyway, we get back to that later. I'm not gonna get all into that. Dr. Chenzara got me all fired up because it's a reality, PG, as we've discussed, that these are our Declaration of Rights and we're the government. So we can go into them, bring them more up to date,
Yes,
revise, amend, and add. And
absolutely.
so
Absolutely, because
I
go ahead. No, go.
I want to make that clear though, so all y'all out there listening understand the reason we're going through this is for ourselves and for you, but it's for us to put things into more practical application around action of making these reality. And wait, I'm gonna stop there. Number 2, that we believe in the supreme authority of our race in all things racial, that all things are created and given to man and woman as a common possession, that there should be an equitable distribution and apportionment of all such things, and in consideration of the fact that as a race, we are now deprived of those things that are morally and legally ours. We believed it right that all such things should be acquired and held by whomsoever means possible. Wow, PG.
If you take this now and look at our land,
Yeah.
look at our cultural base, our foundation, and it has been taken from us. So we have the supreme authority over not only ourselves, but our land. And if we begin to practice that, that means we move out the Chinese, we move out the European, we move out the Arab, and we claim our land. And then we practice supreme rule over our land, which then allows us to have rule and control over us as a people. It allows us to eliminate the poverty that we've experienced. It allows us to eliminate the self-hate that we have experienced. It allows us to begin to change the course of our people from one who have been an enslaved people to people who begin to understand what freedom actually means. Because we don't know freedom now. What we know is what we've been told is freedom. But is it real freedom that you cannot travel the streets in the country where you live without proper identification, because then you face incarceration or being held until someone identifies you? Do you know real freedom? I believe that if you want to know real freedom, you reach back through Sankofa to a time when we were free and you pull that consciousness forward. So we have to reach back to a time when we were the supreme authority and bring that forward in order to understand what that actually means for us today. Then we have to implement that authority. We can do that even under our current situation if we were to come together and say, this is what we declare, this is what we demand, this is how we as a people should be treated and addressed in the current situation, and remove the barriers and remove all of the oppressive natures and chains that lock us down. We can do that.
Okay. Is it all right for me to move on to 3, you all? Okay. I'm feeling the energy, and it's so powerful because, well, anyway, 3, that we believe the Negro, like any other race, should be governed by ethics of civilization and therefore should not be deprived of any of those rights or privileges common to other human beings.
And the ethics and civilization that we need to build that statement on is our historical foundation. If we build it on that, then we can accomplish this. But then when we have to show those who deny us this, we have to show them in the language that they understand.
Anybody want to speak to that?
I actually just was hoping that we would continue moving forward, because the one I really would like to speak to is
I hear you, Queen. Listen, if we get to that hot spot, don't feel no way.
I won't.
That's the queen you're talking to.
I'm just a reflection of her, because I mean, don't forget, I got one here too.
I know.
But,
I'm just wait. I know it's coming. I know it's
for real. That's good, because we know we are definitely setting a precedent here. Number 1, because many times people read these and they sit it on the shelf. They don't attempt to apply, or they don't attempt to, reason with anyone about it, or they don't attempt to think about what did we do to try to make this happen, or how can we do, y'all know what I'm saying, but anyway. Number 4, we declare that Negroes, wheresoever they form a community among themselves, should be given the right to elect their own representatives to represent them in legislatures, courts of law, or such institutions as may exercise control over that particular community.
Just I'm going to take that, because that's kind of linked to the social, ethnic, political system that they were dealing with at the time, which is what we are dealing with in this time. The same social, political, economical system, to where they were demanding the right to choose their elected officials and have their elected officials represent them. However, it's a flawed system.
Yeah.
See, it's a flawed system. I accept what this says, because we duly should have the right to do that. But what we must understand is a flawed system. And part of the reason it's flawed is because we don't have the men and women of character to represent us, but to be swayed by representing that which is their own interest as they address the political situation that they're in. We're in that same time now. So I understand and I agree with it, but I want us to understand it's a flawed system.
Right. And don't we know, we weren't born when these particular declarations were written, but certainly we rode through a lot of those 100 years, and saw what is and what ain't. You know what I mean? So I hear you. 5, we assert that the Negro is entitled to even-handed justice before all courts of law and equity in whatever country he may be found. And when this is denied him on account of his race or color, such denial is an insult to the race as a whole and should be resented by the entire body of Negroes.
Injustice anywhere is injustice
everywhere.
So
absolutely.
That is very personal to all of the things that were said before,
right,
in regard to making sure that we have our own forms of social governance that are inclusive of jurisprudence and law that protects, respects, and nurtures and cultivates protections for African ancestral people. Boom.
I hear you.
And with that boom, let me say that systematically, what we have to understand is they were looking at the system that they were experiencing at the time. And if we look at the system that we're experiencing today, the only difference between then and now is you got some different colored faces sitting on those jury, sitting on that box with that black robe on, functioning with the same laws that condemned you before you ever got to trial.
Exactly.
Ashe. Number 6, we declare that unfair and prejudicial to the rights of Negroes in communities where they exist in considerable numbers to be tried by a judge and jury composed entirely of an alien race, but in all such cases, members of our race are entitled to representation on the jury. Now,
You know what's so amazing? Again, what we have to recognize is as they were developing these our rights, they were looking at the system, and I guess at some point they were trying to see if they could get the white folks to recognize that y'all can do better. I'm not trying to teach white people they can do better. Let me be clear. I already know, that that's a course for somebody else. That ain't mine. The reality is that when it comes to the jury, it's never going to be a jury of your peers, never, because technically you don't have any peers. You say, what do you mean you don't have no peers? Well, I'm a conscious African man. You go get me 12 conscious African people that register to vote that's going to be a part of this system. That's the only way you can put me on trial. Oh, you figure you get me 12 black people. If you get me 12 black people, 7 of them gonna believe that the white man is okay. That ain't a fair trial. Oh, you're gonna give me a trial with 12 white people. Well, hell, might as well just carve me up and send me down the river. See, if we practice it, and I understand my ancestors looked at it different. And that's why when Dr. Chinzara said we can make declarations looking at this going forward, understand something. I appreciate them saying you should vote. You should. Our people died for that. But I also understand that when it comes to a trial, if you ain't registered to vote, you can't get called for the jury. And if you get called for the jury, your ass got to show up. If you don't show up, it's a failed system. It's a failed system because no one really wants to acquiesce to their responsibility. And even when they do, the cultural, political, economical pressures says, quick, fast, in a hurry, send a nigga up the river.
Exactly.
7, we believe that any law or practice that tends to deprive any African of his land or his privileges of free citizenship within his country is unjust and immoral, and no native should respect any such law or practice. Getting deep here, getting deeper.
Yeah, you gotta get deep. It's time to get your gun, but let me not say that out loud, because see, they denied us the right to land when they promised us 40 acres and a meal after working 300 years. They deprived us of land. They deprived us of land and the right to land and leadership and development when they destroyed Tulsa, Oklahoma. See, they have prevented us at every step of the way. And then they continuously ask you, why haven't you changed your situation? We will, as soon as we get you off our neck. We should no longer lose black men to the street by the perpetrators of black men, nor should we lose black men and black women to the street as perpetration to whites, or Asians, or any other people. We have to stand on these Bill of Rights, shape these Declaration of Rights, make them applicable for the 21st century, connect them to our ancestors, and show that what they said then, we can say now.
All right. So that was, what was that, number 7?
Yes.
That was 7. You're at 8 now.
We declare taxation. Let me
I'm sorry.
turn this up and shout it outside. We
can all scream.
We declare taxation without representation unjust, tyrannous, and there should be no obligation on the part of the Negro to obey the levy of tax by any lawmaking body from which he is excluded and denied representation on account of his race and color. Woo. Number
No,
8.
that's so true. But you know what they've done? I tell you, see, systematic racism we have to acknowledge it. What they said is, okay, you don't need taxation without representation, but we're going to tax you so you get a job. So we're going to take taxes out your paycheck before we pay you. We ain't going to ask you to pay us. We're going to pay us. We're going to take your tax. We're going to take your money from you. Now, is the system any better? No. Are you still taxed without representation? Come on, DC. Come on, Dr. Chisholm. We know you're taxed without representation, but our people don't know
Well, see
that they are
here,
taxed. Go.
the Virgin Islands, for those that aren't familiar, is a non-incorporated, non-self-governing territory of the United States. I'm gonna say it again.
Originally.
Okay, whoever, we can hear you now, so you might want to control your sound.
Can you mute that?
Is that American St. Croix? Yes.
We can hear everything you're saying.
Yeah, please mute yourself.
We don't know who that is.
No, we do. That's Sister Queen Settler.
That was
That was Settler.
Say, well, mute yourself, please.
If she did just now, she's fine.
All right, go ahead.
I just wanted to highlight that the fact that we are a non-incorporated, non-self-governing territory, and those words are all pretty terms for a colony, and it's 2020. And so there's a lot of dynamics that are very clear in that portion of taxation without representation. And under normal circumstances, when it applies to the elite, to the white male populace in the United States, that was like grounds for civil war. That was grounds for revolution. That was grounds for uprisings of a variety of sorts, right? But when it comes to ancestral African Black people, then it became patience, turn the other cheek, kumbaya moment. Yes. And in 2020,
kumbaya moment. I like that.
Everybody.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so true, so true. 9, we believe that any law.
No, my phone's here. When you have a moment, my sister has a question, okay? Go ahead.
Yes, she needs to put it in the chat. You can't do it right now until we finish.
Okay, good enough. Will do. Thank you.
Yes, you're ready?
She has to put it in the chat.
Okay, I will.
Please mute yourself too, please, unless we call on y'all, because we are streaming live and everybody's looking at this everywhere. We want to try to keep it smooth as possible.
Okay.
So mute yourself, please.
Okay, I'm not sure how to do that, but I'll find out.
You did a good job, Sister Sewa.
9, we believe that any law especially directed against the Negro to his detriment and singling him out because of his race or color is unfair and immoral and should not be respected.
And there's a complete agreement with that even to this day, because we know there are tons of laws. If you stop for a minute, since this person in the White House now has instituted federal judges, all white, all male, all conservative, all with an aspect of laws and implementation of laws, that we face an uphill battle in America to make certain changes as we move forward. That's not by accident, that's by intent. So I agree, we should not respect those laws, but invariably we have to work to change those laws. So again, it's part of the reason why these Bill of Rights stress our participation in the system that oppresses us, because that was his way of fighting the oppression. Other than building our own government, our own means, our own economics, our own political structure, by building that government, as long as you were here, a part of this government, use this government to fight on your behalf, use the rules. And that's what he's saying. And our ancestors taught us that for the longest period of time. You have to use the system against the system. It's most difficult when you're Black and the system is white racist, but that was the aim of our ancestors.
Okay. 10, we believe all men entitled to common human respect, and that our race should in no way tolerate any insults that may be interpreted to mean disrespect to our race or color. Wow.
And the only part that's missing is it should be to our men and our women. But we understand this was 1920,
Sure.
and that concept was not as it should have been. But here we are in 2020. We have to recognize that, because that disrespect is shown not just to males, but is also shown to our sisters. Our sister queens, our African warrior queens, unfortunately have been disrespected, not just by the oppressor, but also by us.
Absolutely.
We have to respect those rights. And that's a correction or a change that we have to manifest in us, so that we put that gene into our sons to come out with the respect for their sisters and our daughters and their cousins and the women that come into their life. If we do that, this will manifest itself 100-fold.
Okay, we're making progress. We're going into the hour. Not quite there. We're going into that. But number 11, we deprecate the use of the term nigger as applied to Negroes and demand that the word Negro with a capital N be written with a capital N. So in essence, what they're saying is we deprecate the use of the term small n nigger as applied to capital N Negroes and demand that the word capital N Negro be written with the capital N. So obviously, in all the print and everything that was seen prior to this time, whether it was the word nigger or the word Negro, they were all in small case N's. And that's kind of understandable when, you know, white terrorism didn't see us as being human beings. But the reality is, but it's a nomenclature thing. But you want to speak to that, though, PG?
Yes, because one of the things we have to recognize is why Garvey related to the word Negro. Let's go there first.
Okay, I like
because Garvey believed that we were the Negro race, and that was based on the science that we still currently live with today, that there are 3 races in the world: Mongoloid, Caucasianoid, and Negroid. So he looked at us as a race, and that definition of race was utilizing the term Negro. I myself didn't quite understand that. When I came out of Africa, I didn't understand why I was a Negro, but my life lesson with Thomas W. Harvey was enough to get me there. But I still, to this day, say, give me an African scientist that defines us as the Africanoid race, and then we can change this language. But because we lived because this was written based on the European countries in the world that day, Kaffir, which in South Africa meant the same as the N-I-G-G-E-R word here in America, was a slight and a disrespect to us. And he was working to challenge them. And because of this, the word Negro actually began to be spelled with the capital N, which was a touche to Marcus Garvey and those men and women of that time.
Yeah, but we know we're African. I want to clarify, everybody. we know what the deal is, and we know we melanin. You could call us all kinds of this and that, but we know the bottom line: Africa is Africa, and we're Africans. And matter of fact, some folks on the continent that don't fall into the Negro,
right?
So they better check themselves too, because when we start dealing with, y'all know what I'm saying. When we start dealing with house cleaning, I'm not gonna get all into that right now, but that's important. And then that's a big issue you brought into the science, because we as Africans need to be, as Garvey said, science par excellence, meaning
Yes.
we have our own scientific breakdowns, and we got to be more universal and more metaphysical about it. But anyway, number 12, that's where I'm at. Yes, 12. We believe that the Negro should adopt every means to protect himself against barbarous practices inflicted upon him because of color. Self-defense.
Self-defense.
Self-defense. Yes. Arm yourself. It's arm yourself. You see, and I'm not trying to do a history lesson, but just an interpret, just to allow these principles, these laws, our declarations to speak for themselves. But at the time when you faced someone coming to lynch you or set your house on fire, you were supposed to take a number of them crackers with you. See, they may have still put your house on fire, but they're supposed to be counting their bodies at the end. When they was coming to the jail to get you out, to lynch you, the black community was supposed to leave white bodies on the ground so that lynching became something that they didn't want to do because they would lose. When the Ku Klux Klan thought they could ride around in their horses, and we now ride around saying black power to black fist, and folks get upset, black power, black fist, because what we needed to do was kill them horses and kill those surrogates that was riding them. But I don't mean to project violence today. So let me say what we were supposed to do is leave bodies on the ground.
Self-defense, sir.
Self-defense.
Self-defense, sir.
I just didn't want somebody to think I was promoting violence, because we do facing this out. And I want people to understand it's not that we violence, but we are going to defend who we are.
Yeah.
I'm not going willingly to anyone's lynching mob. If a mob come to my door, count the bodies and say the only reason it ain't more is Baba Akili ran out of bullets.
What did Garvey tell the Ku Klux Klan?
I got more trees in Africa than you got in America. Keep lynching.
All right, 13.
I'm sorry.
We believe in the freedom of Africa for the Negro people of the world, and by the principle of Europe for the Europeans and Asia for the Asiatics, we also demand Africa for the Africans at home and abroad.
Self-explanatory.
Yeah, that's number 3.
Self-explanatory. Because what we did not have was Africa for the Africans.
Absolutely.
See, and you know, part of Garvey's inspiration for Africa for the Africans was not just that it was our homeland, it was the fact that there was a need, as it is to this day, for a single nation in the world to represent the interests and the well-being of people of African descent, no matter where we reside.
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely correct. Number 14, we believe in the inherent right of the Negro to possess himself of Africa, and that his possession of same shall not be regarded as an infringement of any claim or purchase made by any race or nation. You want me to keep moving, and y'all just stop me because it's getting ready to get kind of deep.
Keep going.
15, we strongly condemn the cupidity of those nations of the world who by open aggression or secret schemes have seized the territories and inexhaustible natural wealth of Africa. And we place on record our most solemn determination to reclaim the treasures and possession of the vast continent of our forefathers.
Hold on.
Whoa.
Okay, we now need to understand there was a declaration earlier that spoke to education of our children, education of us as a people, because this declaration is hoping that you have enough knowledge to know that you had a wealth that was stolen from you. Because with that knowledge that they stole from you, not just the land, but the history of the land.
Yes.
You see, they don't count the history of Africa before 1 AD. Yet we know categorically there was like 7,000 years of history before that. Before they were out of the caves, we were doing surgeries. Before they was building banks, we were trading in gold and other precious metals. They deny our contribution to the world of today. And with that denial, we have a tendency to always want to take low and figure we got to be taught by them. No, I can be taught by those who look like me, whether they have a college degree or not, because it is that information and that knowledge that is deep in our melanin that's going to help us understand what they stole and then help us understand what we have to reclaim.
16, we believe all men should live in peace, one with the other. But when races and nations provoke the ire of other races and nations by attempting to infringe upon their rights, war becomes inevitable, and the attempt in any way to free one's self or protect one's rights or heritage becomes justifiable.
And I think we just spoke to that for real, because we have got to institute our own military arm in order to move forward and protect those of us. We have militias in this world today. We need to band them together, and then under the auspices of developing a government, institute a military strategical plan to secure our community, change the destruction of our community, promote the development of our communities, and therefore assume our rightful place in this world.
17, whereas lynching by burning, hanging, or any other means of human beings is a barbarous practice and a shame and disgrace to civilization, we therefore declare any country guilty of such atrocities outside the pale of civilization.
So now we don't lynch, but we imprison. We send you in front of a all-white jury and you get sentenced to 20 years for a robbery at a gas station that you did not commit. And then you are murdered because they claim in your bush you had a gun in your bush and they shoot you. And I know you say, who is that? George Jackson.
Mhm.
It could be any black man, any black woman. You see, the system only adjusts to your accomplishments. It does not change because of them.
18, we protest against the atrocious crime of whipping, flogging, and overworking of native tribes of Africa and Negroes everywhere. There are methods that should be abolished, and all means should be taken to prevent a continuous of such brutal practices.
That's how they built the cities on the continent of Africa. That's how they built the cities in the United States of America.
Yeah.
Here they called it the chain gang, and they put you on and they force you to build the highways. In South Carolina, there's a peach grove where the African women and men were buried in the ground without caskets after they were considered to be free. But yet the men were used to build the highways. And if you got sick, you got buried in the ground. It's
Right.
a peach grove.
Right.
See, if we learn our history, our story, and understand our story is emphatically a part of this American system, then we can challenge this system on the atrocities. And then we can challenge the atrocities in every other place in the world. On the continent of Africa, they would not have a city if they had not used us as slave labor, although they didn't call that slavery. They would not have had St. Croix or the Virgin Islands without us, but they didn't call that slavery for long enough period of time for us to talk about it. It was slavery. And when it went from slavery, it went to persecution. And then with persecution, it went to denial of rights. And yet you denied the rights to pursue your own education, your own well-being. The world of African men and women, is all wrapped up in these declarations.
Right.
Because it wasn't just America that they spoke about. Remember, those men and women came from all over the world, and they all saw the same conditions where they heard from.
Plus that.
I just want one moment. I just wish to
Go ahead, Queen.
check, if I may, that the whippings and the flogging and the overworking is still happening now.
Yes.
I mean, we still have forced migration of African people in different parts of the earth. We have the Raisal Nation that is still colonized by Colombia. Right now, we still have brothers and sisters that are being flogged and whipped and tortured in Papua New Guinea by the Indonesians. We still have original brothers and sisters in Australia, even after the fires, even after the landmass, being done in a manner away from their best interests. We have these things, of course, in the continent. We've got Madagascar that's getting ready to become something Asian. There's Mauritius, they've had an oil spill that has affected all of what's happening in that space. And they're whipping people and they're flogging people and they're torturing people if they do not Don't let me start to talk about what's happening in the so-called Middle East with Africans that are going and they don't know whether to call it sex trafficking, human trafficking, exploitation, rape. They don't know what to call it.
Right.
So
All
all
of
of
that.
all of that.
All of that. And see, that's another, see what your point highlights, how we must view not only these declarations, but the world we live in. Again, systematic racism changes its face. It doesn't change its racism, but its face. So you look at it and you see a different face and you think it's different, but yet it isn't different. Human trafficking is real, AKA slavery still here.
Right.
See, so, but you change the way it look. Oh, it's human trafficking, but we can't really stop it. Why not? If we can do, if these countries can do what they do, then we can stop human trafficking.
Yeah.
It exists because they say it's a part of what they do, and it's us that they're trafficking.
Right.
And so they sprinkle in some of theirs because they make it look okay.
That's why I call it white terrorism. Because it was white terrorism then, it's white terrorism now, and it's still in existence.
Absolutely.
Dr. Tizarah, you make an excellent point. And the sad thing is, from the lack of knowledge and consciousness, many of our people don't think it's still happening right now. So it's important for us to remind people that this still applies to today. 19, we protest against the atrocious. This is a deep one here, y'all. We protest we protest against the atrocious practicing of shaving the heads of Africans, especially of African women or individuals of Negro blood, when placed in prison as a punishment for crime by an alien race. Now, I know for a fact that all the way up to the 70s and 80s, Muslims and Rastas were fighting all over the place because this stuff was still jumping off, and I'm certain it's still happening now. You know, but the point is, once again, abuse of humanity. I mean, here people are locked down and you're gonna force to cut their hair because of whatever, whether it's dreadlocks or beard or whatever, and sisters with long hair. And you know, I've heard the talk. Well, anyway, I don't want to get too into that, but I've heard the talk that it's because they don't want them hiding anything in their hair. But that doesn't make any sense, you know. But anyway,
no, that's how they killed George Jackson. But yeah, but understand something. We talk just about the prison. When you went in the military, they cut your hair too.
That's true.
You cut your hair too. And here's the thing: it's wrong because it denigrates you. So anything to break your spirit, to get you to submit, is what they have a tendency to do. This isn't accidental. Well, nothing we are declaring, nothing they have declared.
Number 19, though,
is not accidental.
No, you're right on point. Because number 19 didn't just say in the prisons only.
No.
It's period.
Period.
I just want to clarify that.
Right. I mean, and you know, although today, you know, some people shave their hair and look damn good with it, but it's your choice.
Right.
It's not that you are forced to because they are afraid of you. You know what's so amazing? This white race and its lack of humanity fears us because of our humanity. That's the fear.
I hear you. You ready?
Okay.
Yep. Where we at?
20.
You're at 19. Yeah, 20.
We're 20. We protest. Go ahead.
20. We protest against the segregated districts, separate public conveniences, industrial discrimination, lynchings, and limitations of political privileges of any Negro citizen in any part of the world on account of race, color, or creed. And we know about that one. And will exert our full influence and power against all such.
And we can see some of that today.
Yeah, exactly. Another basic dehumanization thing. I mean, you know, 21, we protect against any punishment inflicted upon a Negro with severity as against a lighter punishment inflicted upon another of an alien race for like offense as an act of prejudice and injustice and should be resented by the entire race. So we know about that too today.
Yes, absolutely. The laws of the day, just as an example, the laws of crack and cocaine.
Absolutely.
Black people use crack, white people use cocaine. Black people got more time than
Yeah.
white people. We also know about the, what is it, street strikes and your outlaw, which put more black people in prison. It was like, oh, here's a godsend. Oh, you stole a Tootsie Roll. Oh, you stole a taffy. Okay, now your third strike, you stole some toilet paper. We're going to lock you up for 40 years. Hey.
Or the mothers that chose to homeschool their children
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
and were put in prison, and the mothers that chose to put their children in schools in different districts than where they lived that were put in prison, while
Right.
the European women that paid the $500,000 to get their children in college, and they're just given not even a slap in the wrist, not even probation.
They got 2 months in prison and they suffering. Oh my God, we got to be away from home for 60 days. Oh Lord Jesus. You know, sometimes you have to recognize that they convinced us so well of themselves that we have to really do the soul searching and say, hold it, wait a minute. How you going to do that when you cheat your own system? And then if I abide by it, and we started our own independent school. We took the system on because the system didn't have homeschooling then.
Yeah.
But we had a little old 3-story building, and they said, what can you do? We produced some of the best minds in Philadelphia out of those schools.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I hear you. 22. We protest against the system of education in the country where Negroes are denied the same privileges and advantages as other races. I mean, we're clear. I mean, you know what I mean? We have a right to, educate our own.
Right. And
Right.
Queen Mother Mary Botha spoke to that earlier.
Yes, she
In
did.
terms of
Yes,
how
she did.
important it is for
Absolutely.
us to have our own. We have to have our own. And it doesn't have to be called an alternative. It's
Huh.
it's the real tiv. It's not
Right.
even an alternative nothing. It's the real
Right.
one, because
Oh,
that's
no.
what time it is.
Because if we don't, we stand to lose the rest of this generation. I can't say we will lose it all because some we've already lost. But you see, if I can, I know we're in the middle and I don't want to belabor this, but as we go through the rest of this document, I want us to take a reflection as to the time frame 1928 to 2020.
Mhm.
And at that time in 1920, there was a belief to a point that you could orchestrate these changes and they would respect your decision and your rule and your right to them. There was a belief that that would be respected. It was a belief that you could demand the same rights that you saw all people of the world have. There was a belief that you could stand up and when you declared it and you could say it, that they would take heed to it because you said it.
PG, you're right. It was a plebiscite. It was
Right.
like you said, it was Africans that came from everywhere, and this
Right.
is what they put together. This
And they believed that it would be respected.
right.
And then they believed that it could be executed. And the unfortunate piece is some of us didn't believe it. And then those who worked against us helped to subjugate this so that it became something that you did, but because it lives in history, it is something that we can bring back and stand on as this momentum continues to build to demand our own nation, our own government, and yet at the same time, the right to representation wherever Garvey said it best. He said, I ain't asking every Negro to go back to Africa because a do-nothing Negro in America will be a do-nothing Negro in Africa and any place else. But what I want is those African men and women who want to go back and build and grow. And if we build and grow with them, then we can protect those who are the do-nothing Negroes. We can protect that African who's lazy and shiftless and wants somebody to do. You say, why would you protect him? Because he is our brother. She is our sister. They are our children. And as we rise, they rise.
23. We declare it inhumane and unfair to boycott Negroes from industries and labor in any part of the world. That's self-explanatory.
Self-explanatory.
24, we believe in the doctrine of the freedom of the press, and we therefore emphatically protest against the suppression of Negro newspapers and periodicals in various parts of the world and call upon Negroes everywhere to employ all available means to prevent such suppression. We know what that was about. They were trying to stop our propaganda from rolling around because our propaganda was going against their propaganda. And, you know, many people got killed hustling and carrying the Negro world. And it's said that the Japanese, you know, loved to smuggle people that were smuggling Negro world because they liked the fact that Africans were starting to talk about Africans for Africans. Now that's deep. So, but anyway, the point is, this is clear that this is a protection. I mean, for us to have the right to push our own propaganda the way we saw fit. And because of what happened historically by Bakili, they put these rights in place.
Yes.
25. We further demand free speech universally for all men. I mean, there it is right there. You can't tell us how to, you know, it's straight up, man. I mean, that's
some, you know,
right.
It's still timely today. We demand free speech for all men and women of African descent.
Right, exactly. And then they say,
so I'm going to reach back to my sister, Dr. Chinzira, and say we will make some declarations and bring this into the 21st century.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. 26.
So she just got drafted for the committee. Keep going.
we hereby protest against the publication of scandalous and inflammatory articles by an alien press tending to create racial strife, and exhibition of picture films showing the Negro as a cannibal. Now we know during the Garvey Renaissance, not the Harlem Renaissance, they call it the Harlem Renaissance, we know that the UNIA continued to take issues with how they misrepresented us in film and that whole thing. We know it was a big battle in Harlem with that. So that's understandable coming out of the
But
convention.
also, see, that I want to, for those on this call and those who are watching Facebook, for those who have a memory that can go back a few decades, you remember the naked white boy swinging through the trees on the continent of Africa that spoke every African language, spoke the language of the animals. He did everything. And he had one white woman, I forgot where he got her from, and they swang through the trees. And then they had one little white boy, and he swang through the trees. And every time they faced an issue, the black man cowards looking for the white savior. You know what? Here is the problem. We look for that white savior all too many times. That white savior in religion, that white savior in the movie, that white savior in the political house of government that rules you today. You keep looking for the white savior. All I want to say to you is, has your ass been saved yet?
Okay, guess what? 27. This Dr.
What'd you say, Dr. Chinzira?
I said 27.
Yeah, 27. Just take it straight to it. We believe in self-determination of all peoples. We believe in self-determination of all peoples. Africans, we believe in self-determination. Self-determination.
To define ourselves, name ourselves, and speak for ourselves.
G. Chakalia in 19.
And you know, I don't know who's listening to us, but I know other people will hear this. So if I may, I ain't gonna digress, just for a minute. Just for a minute. We demand that all Black people believe in self-determination. See, it's not enough that we believe in self-determination. We need all Black people to believe in self-determination. See, and if we could get Black people to believe in self-determination, just self-determination, we could turn the screw and then let the juices of freedom begin to flow, because you believe that you have a right to be free. I don't mean you have a right to go buy a pair of Jordans. That ain't freedom. I want you to believe that you have the right to be free, which means you have the right to self-determination. We don't have to be killers. We don't have to use drugs. We don't have to be servants. We don't have to submit to this racism. We don't have to cower before the courts. If we believe in self-determination, we can build our way.
And see, no. I'm following you clear, sir, and I'm sure people are too, because it's a reality. Like I say, Kuja Chakalia. 1966, we start saying Kuja Chakalia.
Self-determination.
But this was 1920. And even before this, we go all the way back. Y'all know what I'm talking about, because, you know, it's all about foundation. When we say 100 years, Garvey built on something before him, and the UNIA was building on something before them, and before them, all the way back to ancient Kemet. Y'all hear me? So it's very important to recognize, though, the practical application.
Right.
The practical application of something, and that's what you were talking to, PG.
Yeah.
Not believe, be it, be self-determined.
Right.
28, we declare for the freedom of religious worship. I ain't got no further. I mean,
you ain't got nothing to say.
We clear. You
Right.
know, no religious scruples divide us. However, no political machinations. However, we believe in one God, one aim, one destiny. So certainly we want to go back to the African tradition. We clear today. So everybody knows, when we say the freedom, when they said the freedom of worship, they will open up the door for universal worship. I mean, as simple as that. But 29, with the help of the Almighty God, we declare ourselves the sworn protectors of the honor, of the virtue of our women and children, and pledge our lives for the protection and defense everywhere and under all circumstances from wrongs and outrages. I got to read that again. 29. Because this one deep. Because my mama used to talk to me about this one, because she read it. She knew I was in the UNIA, and she said, see what I've been teaching you all along? I mean, so listen, please, y'all brothers. I know the sisters gonna pick up on it, but brothers, y'all listen carefully. 29, with the help of Almighty God, we declare ourselves the sworn protectors of the honor and virtue of our women and children, and pledge our lives for the protection and defense everywhere and under all circumstances from wrongs and outrages.
I say,
but that you know, we have defended every other people's right in the world to what you just read. We defended the right of the white man in America in World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. We defended that man's right, and we helped to oppress people every time we did it. We went to war and came home and were lynched in our uniform. We went to war and came home and was murdered in our uniform just because. But yet we have done this throughout the history of America and throughout our lives. We have to now take this application and apply it to ourselves. We have to take our military skills that we have learned and apply it to how we can manifest a change in our communities across America. There is enough violence that we need to extend this number 20, extend this to practical application now. There in St. Croix, in St. Thomas, in the Virgin Islands, on the continent of Africa, wherever we are, we need to extend that now. Because if we do that, if we extend that now, based on the philosophy of, it says Almighty God, but I care not how you refer to the ancestors and to that power above you, if you accept that, because Garvey accepted that there's a greater power than us, man. If we apply it to our communities, we flip the paradigm in 24 hours. What would Redman Battle say? That if we got 1 million people to give us $1, we'd have $1 million to change and work for our people. So I say this, if you give me 100 people, and they give me $100, I can do the same damn thing.
I hear you. I hear you, sir.
That's it.
30, we demand the right of an unlimited and unprejudiced education for ourselves and our posterity forever. Now, y'all see how our ancestors started out earlier and how they came to this one versus the one we were talking about earlier around, you know, knowing of self.
Right.
Yeah.
Say we demand the right of an unlimited, unprejudiced education for ourselves and our posterity forever. Now, bear in mind, this was a convention, and these declarations were brought up to the floor, point for point, and voted on to be accepted and declared before. Hey, y'all see what I'm talking about? So you can hear the progression taking place in the convention. So a lot of these declarations are interconnected.
Interconnected, because you had to, because sometimes what we don't think we can repeat ourselves without sounding redundant. But this is a repetition of the right for education of us. It was one of the earlier ones. It's there because they recognized you had to come back and address it again, because we Negroes of the 1920s and we Negroes in 2020 still think we know something.
Exactly.
And we do know something, but we think we know something.
But sometimes we forget that we know not that we know not that we know not.
I like that too, but hopefully somebody understands you.
I'm just saying.
I agree.
Here come 31 now.
Yes, brother.
31. Here come 31 right after 30. We declare that the teaching in any school by alien teachers to our boys and girls that the alien race is superior to the Negro race is an insult to the Negro people of the world. You see? Well, anyway.
No, absolutely.
I'm just saying that Queen Mother Mary Botha needs to weigh in.
Right.
I'm just saying, Queen. I'm just saying.
And
dear Secretary General knows.
Yes, and Mary Botha and I talk about this all the time. But you see, like you can't, if you send your children and they get taught by somebody that don't look like them, then they come back confused.
Right.
But when they have the teacher that looks like them, what you say, Mary?
Let Mary say something.
So who started it? We keep on doing it, and we keep on expecting different results. We can't keep doing that. And some of our people who are teaching, our Black teachers, need to know their history because they don't know it. And some of them tell the truth and say they don't know it. Because when I was teaching, I had young Black teachers come to me and ask me to teach them Black history. So I know that our teachers don't know because they've been miseducated. We've been miseducated.
It is.
And so since we've been miseducated, if we don't re-educate ourselves by listening to people who've been educated, and I tell this story many times. When I heard the Honorable Charles L. James, I was 35 years old with a master's degree from a very prestigious university. And I thought I knew. And I sat there and I listened to this man for 2 hours without notes. I realized at this place that I had been deceived to go to by my girlfriend, who knew I would only go to a party. I heard party. I didn't hear speaker. I didn't hear all the other stuff. he got me there, and I was dressed to kill, and I was ready to party. But when I heard this man speak, I knew that I had been seriously miseducated. So it took me about 10 years, and I'm not ashamed to tell it, to listen to Honorable Charles L. James before I could figure out all of the stuff he was talking about. Because I had there was layers layers, more layers. So it's easier to educate someone who has not even been to see these colleges. And I'm not going to tell you what my husband said. I'll write that down for y'all.
No, Mary, no. Tell us what Narrowboater said.
Start time.
Right? BS bullshit.
That's
MS bullshit. A
That's
PhD of social accommodation.
That,
That's what he said.
32.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry I asked that one.
Yeah, social accommodation.
Please,
So you have to
please.
know that if you don't learn from the one who learned from someone who knew, then you're going to be continuously miseducated.
I hear you, Dr.
Dr.
Carter.
Carter G. Woodson mentioned that to us.
That's right.
You know, we don't have to go into that whole story now, but Dr. Carter G. Woodson let us know we were miseducated.
And also the miseducation of the Negro was also published, you all, before it was published in book form, in articles in the Negro World. Just
Yes.
I had to bring that up because Dr. Woodson's spirit came up in here, and I'm a member of ASALA too.
Where we at?
What's happening with them, and I know they over 100 and some odd years of age, and I know they're going through what they're going through, but the reality is Dr. Woodson's original intent was deep.
Yes.
He was a Garveyite, whether they say it or not, I say it. Because
Number 2, 32.
he wouldn't have published that in
32.
the world. Okay, but
32.
you're right, sir. Thank
32.
you. Thank you. Talking about education, that's a hot one.
No, listen, that's why I'm trying to be quiet, because Mary, that's a firestorm. Go ahead.
Where
32.
Negroes form a part of citizenry of any country and pass the civil service examination of such country, we declare them entitled to the same consideration as other citizens as to appointments in such civil service. That's kind of self-explanatory. You know,
But only part I want to add to that is what it also tells us as a government, and I'm saying it tells us as a government. We have to build within the framework the civil service. You have to build the how you get it done with people, and that means departments, because we talk about being a government, and we don't talk about how we're going to implement policies, procedures, and decisions. What we have a tendency to do, which is of course based on our historical references, is function at the top. We have to build out the body.
Okay. I hear you,
I wanted to add that.
No, I hear you, sir. 33. We vigorously protest against the increasingly unfair and unjust treatment accorded Negro travelers on land and sea by the agents and employer of railroad and steamship companies, and insist that for equal fare, we receive equal privileges with travelers of other races. We know about the right to travel. We know that we as the UNIA moved to try to institute our own passports and put them in place. So we understand that nobody should be controlling our way of travel. And then of course we know the railroad situation and the sleeping car porters, and we could go down the line. But transportation, whether it's land, sea, air, or water, was critical always for us. And Garvey demonstrated that in years after that by establishing the Black Star Line. But
And
anyway,
not only that, but what it does is, and I want the listening audience to recognize, is that as we go through these, we want them to recognize they were addressing a situation that was timely to the era. And why, and because they did this 100 years ago, and throughout you will find the connections to present day, which says there's a job for us to do. My sister African Warrior Queen brought it up already once tonight, so I'm bringing it up again, and that is we have to issue some decrees based on this fundamental stand and elevate it to the 21st century so that it can speak to the minds of our youth, because our youth will read this and not see it. We have to have them see it by speaking to it at the point that they have a reference.
right, and that's very important, PG, and I'm glad you emphasized that, because as you've always said, though, this is a work in motion, and we plan on going forward. 34, we declared unjust for any country, state, or nation to enact laws tending to hinder and obstruct the free immigration of Negroes on account of their race and color. 35, that the right of the Negro to travel unmolested throughout the world be not abridged by any person or persons, and all Negroes are called upon to give aid to a fellow Negro when thus molested. Whoa.
And I wish to share that this is sounding like in the 48 contiguous states where there was the formulation of the Negro Travelers Green Book, right? Where persons knew their safe spaces. But with what's happening right now with this pandemic and all of the different layers that are connected within that, and the layers of terrorism that are launched against African persons right now, then we have to expand those access points. We have to have our own Airbnbs. We know what people are dealing with. We have to have our own forms of transportation to deal with how people are getting to certain places. And we have to deal with security. I'll keep coming back to that because security, sovereignty, and African fundamentalism are linked together.
Absolutely.
We have to have security.
There are three pillars that hold. There are three other pillars that hold up the foundation. There are three other pillars.
36. We declare that all Negroes are entitled to the same right to travel over the world as other men. 37. We hereby demand that the governments of the world recognize our leader and his representatives chosen by the race to look after the welfare of our people under such governments. All right, that one's hot.
It's hot because as we institute the 54 nations and they institute collective leadership, so because now not the individual leader, but the collective leadership that then becomes how we speak to African men and women on the continent of Africa and African men and women worldwide. See, then you take this very same statement and you have a government that backs it up.
And the thing is that Garvey was elected at this same convention.
The provisional president of the continent.
So you're absolutely correct on that. 38, we demand complete control of our social institutions without interference by any alien race or races. We demand complete control of our social institutions without interference by any alien race or races. Now, of course, that's a deep one, and 39 is get deeper, as we know, but 38 is hot. And I'm gonna move on to 39, but anybody that wanna speak to 38 and 39 together, please feel free. Akila, you got up at the right time, man, is to flash your red, black, and green, because number 39, brother. But what? You step back down and your red, black, and green is still flashing.
Absolutely.
I love it.
But that ain't why I got up. But go ahead. I just didn't want my flag to be upside down. See, I understand. See, it's red, black, and green. I want somebody to say, ooh, he got his flag upside down. No, I saw that and I said, I got to fix that.
Facebook, I want all the RBG people to tune into this one because we always been talking it, but it's a fact that this is a universal flag of African people worldwide, number 39, that the colors red, black, and green be the colors of the African Negro race.
See, and understand something. And I'm going to say, since RBG has become a major emphasis, particularly with the movements of today, and I won't name them, there's many movements of today, but what they don't do is connect that red, black, and green to its historical reference. Why is there a red, black, and green?
You're right.
Right. They don't connect it back. See, they say, oh, red, black, and green. Yeah, okay. And you think red, black, and green started now. Red, black, and green didn't start here. Red, black, and green started 100 years ago, 1920, when the white man on the radio played a song that everybody had a flag but the coon. Now, I know most of us do not know what the coon means. So let me give you a historical lesson to that word at first. It was an insult to people of African descent that he didn't want to call you the Negro. He called you a coon, which is his title for you as a slave. Everybody had a flag but my slave. And Marcus Messiah Garvey and the men and women of 1920, 25,000, 2,500 delegates said, we will give us a flag. Now, how they came up with it being red, black, and green, I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. But they came up with red for the blood of my people. They came up with black for the race of my people. They said green for the nation of my people, which we did not have, but it was destined to be. And they came up with the trim in yellow for the material, the metal wealth, the material wealth of the continent of Africa, the wealthiest continent on the planet Earth. RBG, don't slight me, say red, black, and green.
Yes, sir. So, you know, we're getting down the wire now. Over the next 20 minutes, I want to, less than 20 minutes, I want to finish these because we have 40, so we can open up for some discussion and some reasoning. And if anybody else has any questions that are in the Zoom, and then we're going to look on the Facebook page. If there's any questions, we're going to try to entertain as many as possible. Number 40, resolved that the Ethiopian anthem, "Thy land of our fathers," shall be the anthem of the African Negro race. 41, we believe.
Before you do that.
Sure, talk about it.
And the only reason I want to mention that is because I need people to understand the time frame in which they made that decision. Because if we were to make that decision today, we would not choose that Ethiopia, the land of our fathers, as our national anthem. And I need us to understand that our people at that time, that's where we were. If we can't appreciate our ancestors' situation and position, and because of our religious or lack of thereof or different views, reject what they did, that's a fallacy and a fault on our part, and we won't be successful. We have to appreciate what they did, recognize what they did, even if we say today we're going to come up with a different anthem. And some people might want James Brown's song, "Say It Loud and I'm Proud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," but that ain't my choice.
We're gonna mix it up a little bit. We're gonna add a little nice and style. It's gonna come. We got some roof that's gonna make it pop. Know that.
Okay, then we do that. And if we do that, once we do that, then we go back and embrace. We can go back, but I say embrace this and then embrace the change.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we want to.
But you see, I don't trust my people to. I don't say I don't trust. I don't trust those who listen to this to understand. Oh, they skipped over that. No, because they'll look for that where they can dig into you and come at you, and they looking for that. So I want to put the, if you coming at me with that fight, come prepared to get your head knocked off, because I'm ready.
Well, see, what I'm just suggesting as we get to, because we notice that we've gone from the complaints and then add these whereas pieces in terms of the demands and declaration, etc. And then we're getting to the resolve, to the resolution piece. So persons need to know, for those that are coming to this session just fresh and new, we're looking at a document that was prepared in 1920.
Yes.
And we need to recognize the mindset, the social context, where the priorities were, what was going on, the layers of being between World War I and World War II that were really at the forefront of our ancestors, and the financial security and the security, the militaristic security that was in the mindset of these 25,000 strong brothers and sisters.
Absolutely.
So, okay, number 40.
I just didn't want us to skip on 30 on that number 40, because I know, as you do, our people will, those who consider themselves politically astute, will jump right down your throat and say, hey, but no, that's why we keep making a reference to 1920. It was a different situation. What Garvey saw in the world, we're not seeing.
Oh, exactly.
It's a different world.
Number 41, we believe that any limited liberty which deprives one of the complete rights and prerogatives of full citizenship is but a modified form of slavery.
Non-incorporated, non-self-governing territory of.
That
territory of colony. Okay.
was like a, that's
See,
like
go ahead, sister. Don't stop.
I'm just saying that in of itself
Yep.
is probably the one that I'm sure several of us in these respective colonies that still exist in 2020
Mm-hmm.
just highlight and just put it in the chat in the different social media spaces and places of persons claiming that they're going to be the elected or appointed leaders of whatever. We need to make sure that when we read this and we speak of the prerogatives of full citizenship, that we also address this to entities like the African Union that forget about the prodigal sons and daughters of Africa that are coming home for our land, sovereign land and place. So pick a place. It could be 10% of all 54 nation states, or pick a spot that is appropriate, so that when those of us that choose to make that return home, when we're saying Africa for the Africans at home and abroad, that there is a space, that I'm not trying to spend $1 million US in order to get 10,000 square hectares of whatever. Okay.
exactly.
No, but don't stop, because see that
It's gonna
too.
come up in 46.
Go ahead.
42. We declare it an injustice to our people, a serious impediment to the health of the race, to deny competent, licensed Negro physicians the right to practice in the public hospitals of the communities in which they reside, for no other reason than their race and color. 43. We call upon the various governments of the world to accept and acknowledge Negro representatives who shall be sent to the said governments to represent the general welfare of Negro peoples of the world. I know you like that one, PG.
Absolutely, because when they elected Marcus Messiah Garvey, the provisional president for the continent of Africa, he was elected to speak to the world on behalf of African people, chosen by African people. See, so what we're saying at this point is that as we send representatives, as he did to the League of Nations, respect that. And as he sent representatives to African countries, respect that. And then when he sent representatives to other European nations, it was respect that. But without the military arm to demand it, respect was a request that white folks chose not to abide by.
Dr. Chinzara led us right into this one with what she was saying earlier, because it's critical. It kind of played right in. I mean, spirit is just rolling, because we are revisiting 1920,
right?
Independence Day 2020, for a reason, so that we can rejuvenate, revive, and revert and advance. But at any rate, I'm gonna move on.
You might need to say that again, though. Rejuvenate, revive, revert, and advance, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rejuvenate, revive, and revert to advance.
To advance, gotcha.
To advance, right?
You got to do all that to advance, because we basically we're clear that we are working to educate, agitate, and elevate. But anyway, we
organize.
And we got organize, as my brother Kwame Ture was clear.
Crystal clear.
While I mentioned Kwame Ture, y'all better leave him alone out there. All of y'all, campaigners talking stuff. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Move on, Single.
We're gonna come to that.
It's important though, because
yes,
that's an ancestor that's in the whirlwind that told me straight up that he was a Garveyite.
That's right.
Face to face, sat down. Right. 43. We call upon the various governments of the world to accept and acknowledge. Oh, I just said that. 44.
Yeah, you get 44.
Just give me
all. Don't worry, we got you.
We deplore and protest against the practicing of confining juvenile prisoners into adults, and we recommend that such youthful prisoners be taught gainful trades under humane supervision. Now we know that today, this is Black August still, and we got political prisoners, and we got prisoners of war, and they in inhumane conditions.
And we have young men and probably young women in prisons with older men than older women that are abused, and to the point to where we've had several commit suicide because of those conditions.
So it's definitely humane. 45, be it further resolved that we as a race of people declare the League of Nations null and void as far as the Negro is concerned, and that it seeks to deprive Negroes of their liberty. Now, we know that the UN folks read this declaration and took a lot of this out and used it in so-called UN declaration. I mean, y'all, I've heard that story from many elders, but I think it's factual. And the
Right.
point is, because, you know, this was done in 1920.
Right.
And not only that, but
the Declaration of Human Rights was 1948, and
right.
it was definitely persons, and some Africans were provided the wordsmithing for that particular document. So
and when Garvey sent his team to the League of Nations, they presented the document.
That's right.
And so in 1948, they used part of the document so that it could appear to be a collective entity, although realizing in 1948, African countries didn't have a seat at the table.
That's right. 45, be it further, oh no, I just read 45. 46, we demand all men to do unto us as we would do unto them in the same justice, and we cheerfully accord to all men all rights we claim herein for ourselves. So that's self-explanatory. You know,
that meant what Garvey understood. It's self-explanatory if you understand it. But what we demand certain rights for us. We demand it, and we demand that those rights, be it the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, we demanded them. And he also said, as much as we deserve them, okay, they deserve them too.
Yeah.
But they only deserve them if they don't take them from me.
Yes, exactly.
If you take them from me, then you don't deserve them.
Exactly.
And if you take them from me, I have the right of due process to eliminate you from having the ability to take them from me.
47, we declare that no Negro shall engage himself in battle for an alien race without first obtaining the consent of the leader of Negro people of the world, except in a manner of national self-defense.
And I technically wish we had abided by that rule. So many Black men wouldn't have died.
Exactly, but you're absolutely right. That's the point. That's a good point, PG.
Right.
You go back. That's what I was talking about that 100-year gap. And
right.
It's so important.
See, because we not got caught up. We believe in our citizenry, and therefore we utilize those institutions, even those that oppressed us, to try to demonstrate our citizenry and our commitment. And that's why many of us wore uniforms.
Right.
Many of us promoted this government because we saw it as a way of establishing our citizenry so that we could be respected as equal parts of this particular country or those countries that oppressed us. It was a fallacy, but it was because we were not educated properly that we believed such. And our ancestors, and true to them and respect, it was 1920, and that was a part of the path they saw to recognition and freedom.
Right. 48. We protest against the practice of drafting Negroes sending them to war with alien forces without proper training, and demand in all cases that Negro soldiers be given the same training as the aliens.
So just a short history lesson, just short. One of the things, because of stuff I do, I learned about the Montford Point Marines in the United States of America. Most people know nothing about them. They were the first Black Marines. They weren't even allowed to go to Camp Lejeune because they were Black. So they built their own base. And here's why they built their own base before they could be trained. And then when they got Black majors, sergeant majors to train them, they said those Black sergeant majors was worse than the white sergeant majors. And you know why? Because all of them believed that they could make America live up to its creed. The question you should ask yourself is, did it? And the answer I can answer, it did not.
So 49, we demand that instructions given Negro children in schools include the subject of Negro history to their benefit. Well, we laid on that early. I mean,
Yeah, and Mary Bolter would jump out the chair if you didn't recognize it. So
we made that clear.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Queen.
50, we demand a free and unfettered commercial intercourse with all Negro peoples of the world. Wow. Wow. Short sentence, but straight to the point.
Yep.
51, we declare for the absolute freedom of the seas for all peoples.
And today we would have to say all highways, all airwaves, not just the seas.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, here's what they, like you were saying, because of that time period, they were
Right. They were dealing with commerce.
Maritime law. They were
Right.
looking at maritime.
Exactly.
Right. They were dealing with commerce.
Exactly.
Right. They're dealing with commerce.
52, we demand that our duly accredited representatives be given proper recognition in all leagues, conferences, conventions, or courts of international arbitration wherever human rights are discussed. Wow. Now, a whole lot has happened since then, of course, with that number 52. I mean, we could go on and on, all the way up to the Durban Conference. I mean, the reality is that this was 1920.
Right. And in 1920,
you go to the international arena
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
But in 1920, as they looked about the world, they recognized that all this needed to be addressed because they recognized it was all wrong.
Right.
They recognized it was all wrong. So it's 100 years ago. I didn't live 100 years ago. Close, but not quite. I live 100 years ago. So I stop it. I can't speak to that. But at the same time, I can speak to from the 60s going forward. Absolutely. And if you look from the 60s going forward and you look at this particular statement, it's speaking to 2020. It's speaking to 2020.
Hello.
We have got to understand our ancestors in 1920 through the spiritual guidance of those who came before them kept trying to tell us, wake up and see and build your own.
And guess what? Number 53. We proclaim the 31st day of August of each year to be international holiday to be observed by all Africans. Now, this is 1920. Now, that's what we're doing tonight. And our observing tonight in 2020 is to observe this particular document, but in time to come, we're gonna go into the document African fundamentalism and a whole lot more.
That's right.
As for those that may not know, looking at this, and Baba Akili, this is a sidebar, but it's important because you and I both are teaching the course of African philosophy now to quite a few people. A good brethren of mine up in Toronto said they must now start studying the course of African philosophy.
Absolutely.
And just sent me that WhatsApp. And he said, what does it cost? So I said, guess what, bro? It has no cost to it other than you becoming a member of the UNIA and establishing a division in Toronto. And you know what the reply was. Let's get it on. So the point I'm making to everybody is, Marcus Garvey in 1938, 18 years after this, wrote the course of African philosophy. So,
but he wrote that course, if I can interject, he wrote the course based on what he saw lacking in leadership. Exactly. You see, I've had conversations with Dr. Chinzera. So we're going to work out a methodology to where we can start teaching people the course of African philosophy there. Because people have to understand, even in the course of African philosophy, you have to deal with the time frame and then the current initiatives. Right. And out of this conversation tonight, and out of conversations that I hope this conversations generate, we begin to impact the minds of people of African descent all over the world. If 100 years ago, Our ancestors said this should be our Independence Day. 100 years from now, the government of the African people worldwide should be standing up, celebrating on this day, because then it'll be 200 years. And as we move to that process and we build in everything that we've talked about tonight, an economic structure, educational structure, the political structure, the civil servant structure, we build it all in, because on the continent of Africa, those 54 governments, 55, including Ethiopia, have got to come to grips with the fact that we have a place there. See, Africa belongs to all of us. And I ain't got to pay no taxes for what's already mine.
Teach, brother.
I just got to come
Well,
and be willing to work for it.
You're getting close to sovereignty now. You're talking sovereignty now,
But that's what we have to do as a government.
Absolutely.
See, government to me is not, this ain't a plaything.
That's right.
See, when we say government of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League, people don't understand. When we say the government of the UNIA represents all African people worldwide. So we're saying we're the government of African people worldwide. So there isn't a problem in the world that this governmental structure that we're putting together, we shouldn't address. And then when we address it, we have to also come in unity, because it's telling us, unify with all of our brothers and sisters that have that same aim, that same direction. If we unify, then as that government evolves on the continent of Africa, and I've said it and I'll say it again, it will be the first democratic government in the entire world since 1 AD. There's not been a democratic government for African people ever. White people, Asian people, all gonna look to this government and say, damn, can I do that?
54. We want all men to know that we shall maintain and contend for the freedom and equality of every man, woman, and child of our race, with our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I got to read the last part too, because we're wrapping up right here. We're going to turn it over to you, PG, and we're going to have some open dialogue a little bit for, before we close out. And we got some questions, and I'll look in the chat room and see what else might be there. I'll look on also the Facebook page. These rights we believe to be justly ours and proper for the protection. Hello, Dr. Chisholm, I was talking about that security. This is absolutely clear.
That's right.
Of the Negro race at large, and because of the belief we, on behalf of 400 million Negroes of the world, do pledge herein the sacred blood of the race in defense, and we hereby subscribe our names as guarantee of truthfulness and faithfulness hereof in the presence of Almighty God on this 13th day of August in the year of our Lord, 1920. That is the end of the document of the Declaration of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World, but it's certainly not the end. Baba Akili, and let's open up. I'm gonna look in the chat room while you are opening up and talking.
Okay, but Dr. Ginger already unmuted her mic, so I'm gonna go right to you, Doctor.
I just would like to encourage the listeners to reflect, look on the, not only in our chat, but on the Facebook page, and I'll place it in the other links so that you can see there's a free ebook version of the Miseducation of the Negro that was referenced. There's a version of the Declaration, so persons can go through and peruse and at your own pace, review and see what each of these significant components, from the preamble to the complaint to the actual demands being made in addition to the actual resolution, because 54 is a significant number, even if you look at it in terms of 9. And it's important to look at that. There's some other references to what we've been discussing. One of the early questions that was shared by Sister Queen Serwa, and she was saying her sister was asking this question.
Yes.
And it was, if it is true that the highway unions are still discriminating against our brothers and sisters.
Oh, it's true. If you, again, it's not hard for you to see it, but they don't call it discrimination because you are employed. Your employment, however, is not a skilled trade. You are hired to watch and hold the signs and control traffic. And then in industries that are doing buildings in major cities, the carpenters union, the bricklayers union, most, if not all of those unions are predominantly run by white males. So it even eliminates females, both white and well as black. So yes, it's true. Here in Philadelphia, as an example, to try to steer young students coming out of high school into unions, they tried to establish an agreement with the unions to accept certain number of black youth into unions apprenticeships, where they were entering into the apprenticeships of the laborers. I'm not denying and putting laborers down, but if I studied electricity or electronics in school, I don't want to be a laborer. I want to pursue electronics or electricity, which is a skill which is used in building buildings and major highways. So now what they've also done is said, okay, if you qualify for an apprenticeship, it's a 5-year apprenticeship, 5 years, basically at a wage that is just maybe livable, but at the same time, you have to also attend college. And so you have to do college and come out with your associate degree and finish your apprenticeship in 5 years. Now, an associate degree is generally a 2-year process, not a 5-year process.
Correct.
But the apprenticeship program is a 5-year process. See, so they do that because if you are a young black male, black female, and you want to try to progress based on your knowledge, you want to move a little faster, that's not going to move you quickly. That's going to move you slower. And the slower that it moves you, the less likely you're going to pursue that end. You may pursue other things, but those unions, which is what we were talking about, trade unions, they now open plumbers union. My son is a certified qualified plumber. He has his own business. Couldn't make it in the plumbers union. Just saying. He did plumbing in Afghanistan. He did plumbing in Afghanistan for the U.S. government, but they didn't want him in the union. So he started his own business. I'm saying we have to recognize, again, systemic racism. Systemic racism changes his mask so that you don't see it.
Right. So that's why I just wanted to actually get you back on what you said earlier, because because we're using English, which is a very limiting and a very skewed language. It's very important that the terms that we add to this 21st century decree, and as we expand the declaration and we start to look at African fundamentalism on a global scale, 21st century style, that we begin to use terms that move us away from the limitations of the capitalist imperialist drama. So whatever is more progressive and more African-centered, beyond even what we say democratic, so we don't get caught up in the demonocracy that's connected, or the colonialocracy that's connected to democratic terms, that we start to bring in that Ubuntu, that we begin to bring in that Ma'at, that we begin to bring, so it's a balanced type of social governance that really elevates and allows our people to ascend. So I concur with that.
Now, you know, I don't want to shift gears. I want to get in another gear. So I gotta shift to get in another gear.
You do with a stick shift, baby.
So no, this is the 100th centennial. And this month, Black August, in 1979, it was established as Black August. And we definitely have always, here in DC, and I'm sure in St. Croix, and I'm sure in Philly, and I'm sure in Chicago, and all other places that are serious about political prisoners that have been held far too long in the bowels of North America, and also prisoners of war. And let me define that. Prisoners of war are any African people that are incarcerated. And because you're a prisoner of war, if you get caught as a thief or whatever they call you, there was a reason and why you did it and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, you're a prisoner of war. political prisoners are brothers and sisters who have fought doing the kind of work we're doing and other kinds of work to uplift Africans that have been, as Baba Kili was saying earlier, were innocent actually, like Mumi Abu Jamal, you know, like Jamil Alameen, you know, H. Rap Brown, you know what I mean, like Matula Shakur, and we could go on and on. There's so many that are still in lockdown and are not well in health. So anyway, we celebrate Black August, but we also celebrate Mosiah Month, and we also celebrate this year the centennial. So what I want Dr. Chenzara and Baba Kili to speak to her, because we're dealing with the legacy of this document, but we're also dealing with the legacy of our ancestors who are waiting and watching. And we also know children are crying and dying because our African people are still too apathetic. They haven't got to a point where really recognizing who they are and how powerful we are with our Blacktricity to put a stop to all of this foolishness going on in the streets. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm an angry Black man, but I'm gonna channel my anger in such a way where we build for the next 100 years, Baba Kili and Dr. Chenzara. So at this point, I'm gonna go to Dr. Chenzara first, Baba Kili, and anything you wish to share, my sister, in terms of giving us inspiration, motivation, and a direction, because, you know, we're not in this for ourselves, and it's not about me, he, she, and we. It's about, I mean, it's about collectivity, and it's about we. And Baba Kili spoke earlier to that, and it's critical that we leave this message, because this being August the 31st is not the end, not with us, not with UNIA, ACL, RLC 2020. It's not the beginning, and it's not the end, but certainly you're gonna hear more opportunities for us to try to engage you, and the building goes on with organizing with all race first movement. So without any further ado, Dr. Chenzara, take your time to articulate whatever you want to share at this time, coming through you spiritually, mentally, or emotionally.
So first and foremost, like we've been covering for the balance of this evening, and just with all that has been celebrated around the globe, there's, you know, this is a powerful time. Trinidad and Tobago are celebrating their independence this day, and it's in the infinite wisdom of the connection of the elders of what they knew the UNIA ACL did in 1920, that this particular day was also part of that selection. There's a number of other celebrations within the Caribbean and other parts of the African world that are connected to what came out of this Declaration of the Rights of Negro People of the World, right? So that's very important that we recognize that. It's also connected to what took place in Haiti, and we sometimes overlook that when we talk about, you know, Ducky Bookman and the decree, the prayers, the initiative that came forth for African people to rise up in the manner that they did to decree and establish their independence in Haiti. And again, we're speaking of a Haiti that was the entire island, not 1/3 Haiti and 2/3 Dominican Republic. It was the entire Quisqueya, the former Hispaniola, etc., that became Saint Dominguez, that became Haiti. So there's a very different history that we need to be mindful of when we look at these things. And this is what we were hearing in those 54 statements and those 12 complaints that we were hearing and what was being resolved in this declaration. So I offer a couple of commentaries in that regard, because it's what we're going to do after August 31st. It's 2020. What are we willing to do?
What's next?
Are we willing to work with the organizations? You know, you mentioned Kwame Ture, who was instrumental to a lot of us, definitely to myself as a cadre in the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And, you know, how are we extending this support to the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, which is celebrating 40 years since its formation in 1980. And we know any African-based organization that can last longer than 5 years is impressive. 10 years, you did good. But 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 and more, we have to give credence and reverence and respect, and have a certain degree of integrity, discipline, organization, and loyalty. Because loyalty is a term that seems to be missing when we start to look at some of these different African-centered, Black, progressive, global, African, Pan-African organizations. And this is around the globe. You know, we need to be looking at the Caribbean Pan-African Network. We need to be supporting the Central American Black organizations. We need to be looking at what NCOBRA is doing. We need to be observing what's happening in the reparations movement and the repatriation engagements. We need to be looking at the Ethiopian African Black International Congress. We need to be understanding what the Rastafari organizations, whether it's the Hausanai Bingi, the Rastafari International, or whatever organization, we need to be embracing our African spiritual systems and the orders. And I need to be very clear. I may not know all the names, but whether it's through Kandumble, Ifa, Yoruba, Basa, Sangoma, whatever it is, we need to be bringing that in. We need to be embracing. People have to stop this disconnect with things that come out of ancient ancestral Africa. If you say Egypt, that's how we know that you don't really know, because you're sticking in a place where we're in the decline. It's kind of like looking at America now. It's in its decline, right? You want to say something half decent about America, you got to go back to 1770 something. And it wasn't all that good back then, right?
Yes,
so when we're dealing with this African Independence Day, we need to bring it up and incorporate that self-determination, incorporate that cooperative economics, incorporate that collective working responsibility. See where I'm going? That unity,
Yes.
that creativity, that faith, all of those, that purpose, all of those principles that we wait and do. Some people just do a talent show for these things, you know, and they're gonna do big fet. But what are we doing to transform the institutions to build into eternity? Like, so when we look back at this August 31st, what is that pyramidal Merkut structure that we gonna put in place that's gonna be into perpetuity, where a millennia from now, people is still remembering what took place these first 100 years and how we move forward. And that's why I'm so thankful that the reminder of our African Queen Mother Warriors as a movement, but even those sistren that may not know that what they're doing and their contribution is about African Queen Mother Warriors, unapologetically dealing with our own, educating our own, birthing our own, protecting our own, feeding our own, growing amongst our own, building our own communities. Because what we have learned in 2020 through their pandemic that has a bunch of names is that we have to make sure the next time they stay home. The next time they stay home, we need to be in a community that we stay home, and our stay home is a staycation too. It can't just be them there. That's comfortable. It cannot be like that anymore.
Yes.
So I say those things because those are the kinds of vibrational shifts that have been coming forth. We need to be calling on all those ancestral forces of raw evolution, of restoration, of healing, so that we can, even in our conversations like this, anybody want to come and bring nar, a better term, that's not clear to everyone, want to come and bring dissension, this ain't the space for that day. This is right. This is the space for how are we building. If it's to work with the various Exodus Alliance organizations, so be it. If it's to really embrace some of these organizational pieces where it's the year of return or the come back to Africa, it cannot be come back to Africa just because we are a Western Union bank or a remittance.
Right.
It has to be that we are organically with land, cultural exchange, healing exchange. I want hear apology. Your word of apology is not suitable anymore. It has to be apology with action. You apologize, here's your 10,000 hectares. You apologize, here is $10 trillion to put towards investment, right? This thing of trying to do a bake sale to run a social government into perpetuity can't go like that. We can't do this part-time. Our 100% work has to be this, and we have to be able to have currency and resources that are reciprocated for us to do that. So I hope that that comes across
Yeah.
crystal clear, because it's shared in the article space that it's given.
Well, I encourage people.
Go ahead, Single.
Baba Kili, I want let see if Mary want to share something too.
Go right ahead.
But let me say this, Dr. Chinzarod, thank you so much for that. And to y'all listeners out there that missed anything, listen to it again. And listen to it again and again and again and again, because we want as much clarity. And I'm glad you said that, Dr. Chinzarod. We want everyone to be very clear. We love everybody. There's no love lost, but we ain't got no time for no play stuff. We ain't got no time to be messing around. We meet everybody at the work table. Mama Mary, is it anything you want to say?
Just a couple of things. Dr. Shinzer said most of what needed to be said. We need to know our enemies. We need to teach us how to recognize our enemies, because we don't. See, we've been Christianized to the point, if it ain't about Jesus, it ain't about nothing. We have got to cut through some of this. I'm not against any church anywhere, but we keep teaching people that we're all human beings. The word hue means color. They ain't got none of it. So we think we're dealing with human beings, so we think they think like us, and they don't. So we need to recognize that. We need to study our enemies and know how they operate.
Urugu.
Books like Uruga, we need that. We need that to be broken down. Dr. Francis Cress Welson's book.
Yes.
All of those kinds of things, because it's about psychology. It's about, as Brother Keely said earlier, they keep changing words. They keep changing the way things look. And then we're around just like little puppy dogs running around checking on what they're doing. We don't need to give energy to that. Energy, whatever you give energy to, grows negative or positive. And Marcus Garvey said he was on the side of the one with the strongest battalion. So you know what that means? That we got to have power, educationally, politically, economically, scientifically, in every possible way, and more than our enemies. Not just as good as, but more than. Because if you cannot make somebody do anything, you have no power. So we got to get power. That's what I'm saying. We got to get power.
You know what I like to call it? I'm gonna go to the PG so we can wrap up, but y'all know what I like to call it. I call it Blacktricity. And, and Blacktricity is not mine, it's all of ours. It's the reason I say Blacktricity, y'all, is because the Most High created us to be sovereign lords of the earth. And we all got a mission. And if you know your purpose and you know who you are, then you got to get busy sharing your Blacktricity. And you got to love, you got to share love. See, a lot of times we get into, the nationalists and the Pan-Africanists. I'm talking to the conscious community here, y'all, even though I love all of y'all, but I'm really talking to those brothers and sisters say they know. And I say, the more you know, the more you know you don't know. Because if you know enough, it's time to show. Like Dr. Chinzarod just finished telling us, we got to get busy understanding this ain't a part-time thing.
In a part-time.
No, it's a lifetime thing. And so you got to put your life into it. But we love all of y'all. Without any more further ado, President General of the UNIA is going to close us out. Baba Akili and Nkrumah.
First, let me give praises and respect to my sisters that have spoken before me, because they have laid out a foundation and the plan. And starting this evening with the Negro Bill of Rights, it gave us a view of 100 years ago. And all of the articulation that we made on each one of them that we spoke about was to try to connect them to 100 years later. And at the same time, the fundamental principle is the same. We need independence. We need economic independence. We need political independence. We need a government that speaks for us throughout the world. We need to reestablish our cultural racial connections with our brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa and everywhere else in the world. See, it's not just about Africa, it's about African people all over the world. If Dr. Chinzara has a problem in St. Croix and I'm in Philadelphia, I got a problem in St. Croix. If I have a problem in Philadelphia, you in DC have that problem.
Right.
But the Chief Ajamu in Africa has that problem. Even though those problems may look different, we each have the same problem and we each need one central solution for those problems. I believe tonight the sisters gave us those solutions. I believe that our ancestors gave us the wherewithal, the ability to look into their mindset 100 years ago and say to us 100 years later, this is what we must do. As I was listening, I was also looking at something probably none of you have had an opportunity to see. It's called the historical biographical entries of men and women that were affiliated with Marcus Messiah Garvey from the beginning until his transition, all the way to Mr. James, Mr. Harvey, and it's done alphabetically. What took me to that is as I listen, people don't understand the history of the UNIA, and most of the time it's because everyone wrote the history from their particular point of view.
Right.
So they didn't write they wrote their truth, not necessarily the truth. But when you look at the Negro Bill of Rights, you read the truth. It was a truth for 1920. Its relevancy is that it laid the foundation for us to have reasonable discussions in 2020. Each one of those instances that they talked about of the negativity, our lynchings, is now our imprisonment. It's now our unemployment. It's now our black on black crime. You say, well, how does black on black crime fit in it? They didn't mention black on black crime. They didn't have to. They mentioned crimes against the people. They mentioned crimes against the sisters. They mentioned crimes against our children. I don't mean no harm, but if I teach you to commit the crime for me,
Come on.
that's black on black crime, because I don't want to do the crime anymore. So I teach you to teach in your schools white history, not black and brown history first, but second, which means I'm teaching that white people are first and black and brown people are second. So if I teach black and brown history first, and I teach our story as a fundamental foundation, that means you don't celebrate Christopher Columbus because you know that whitey didn't do shit. I'm sorry, just what you know. You will know that the reason the economic system that exists in the world today is built, and you say built on the Jews, is built on the Rothschilds that came out of Germany, because Germany was taking the economics back from those Germans that practiced Judaism. Don't get it twisted. They were Germans practicing the religion called Judaism, and which now became the Jews, and they got a nation, and we ain't get a damn nation, and yet we suffer through slavery. I don't mean no harm or disrespect to those people, because God will say you got to respect people. So I'm going to respect them, but I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth. Black men, you persecuted black women. That's the truth. If we're going to fix this, we got to first honor up to our own mistakes, and then we can move past it. You can't move past your mistake if you don't acknowledge it. You can't move past your shortcomings if you never see them. And our acceptance of a European dialogue and a European definition has been our shortcomings, which is why in 100 years we have not progressed further than we have. But we are exactly where we're supposed to be at this point in time. We want to be further, but we're exactly where we're supposed to be because of what happened on the continent of Africa. Germany colonized Africa. Britain colonized Africa. France colonized Africa. Belgium colonized Africa. America didn't say they colonized Africa. They just allows 300,000 of us to come here and manifest ourselves into millions because we had babies and children. And what happened is those who came here that was connected to Africa maintained it, and those who were born here didn't. So now we got to reconnect.
The American Colonization Society.
Yes, we got to reconnect. See, you got to reconnect. We say we got black billionaires, but every black billionaire you have still work for some damn body.
Yeah.
See, so Shaq is a billionaire. People know Shaq, great big 9-foot mammoth black man, got these commercials on TV. He getting a paycheck. That means you're getting a paycheck. That means somebody paying you. If they paying you, they still own you.
Thank you.
Unless, of course, you have conscious mind, and then you take a paycheck and do what you got to do, and then they don't own you. It's just a system that you operate in. There's a difference. There's a difference when your mind is conscious to when your mind is colonized and when your mind is colonialized. When you have a free African frame of thought, you function different. You see the world different. You manifest different. These black men and women that put forth that Negro Bill of Rights had a free, conscious African mind that looked at the world of 100 years ago and said, this isn't right. We, with our free African mind, has to look at the world today and say, this isn't right. And this is what we must do to change it. We don't have to ask them to give it to us. We will tell them and take it because it's our right to have. And if nothing else, that's what the Negro Bill of Rights said. We have a right to freedom. We have a right to pursuit of happiness. We have a right to an independent nation. We have a right to an independent educational system. We have a right to commerce. We have a right to wherever we live to be elected officials. We have a right to govern ourselves. We have a right to govern wherever we live based on where we live. If you live in Philadelphia, you have a right to govern you. And that means you have a right to govern all Philadelphia. You live in St. Croix, we're supposed to be able to govern ourselves without the British influence or the French influence or the American influence. I think it's more American now. My right, sister, it's American influence.
It's more American now, and it was formerly Danish. And I give thanks for what you shared, because it allows for that word of African, reminding our viewers, our listeners, of African fundamentalism, of African sovereignty, and the importance of recognizing that our resistance and our demands and our declarations in the 21st century are formulated as decrees.
That's right.
We say it, and then it's done so.
That's right.
We have a saying here, make it so.
That's right.
Just make it so.
And we have the saying that say, speak truth to power and speak it into reality. Speak truth to power. So that's what this is tonight. So for the listening audience, for those of you who hear us and you think, well, they just fantasizing. No, let me say this to you. I'm gonna hold up this document. Like I say, you haven't seen it. You can't see it. It's on the white page. But here it lists every member of the UNIA as UNIA Inc. and the rival UNIA, because people have a tendency to be confused whether or not there was a UNIA Inc., whether there was a UNIA, and if there was a rival UNIA. Yes, there were 3 UNIAs, damn it. Let's get our history right. If we can get our story right, then we can correct what other people see, and then we can move forward. It isn't about whether I'm better or right and you're wrong. It's about us understanding the road it took to get here. And that road to get here is built with blood, sweat, and tears, damn it. And if we're going to go forward and build the government, since we are going to go forward and build the government of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, led by RLC 2020, so that when that conversation happens on the continent of Africa, every island, every state, every country will be represented in that discussion with those men and women on the continent, because our African warrior queens demand the right to be leaders, and we will fight for their right and step back and let them lead us to freedom. Freedom now, freedom in the 21st century.
So close us out, Baba Akili, if you would, unless Dr. Chinzara had any other words she wanted to share, because we're over time. But I want to thank Brother Heru, Brother Harold, Thank Brother Sam for streaming on Facebook. For all of you out there listening on Facebook, it will be posted on the New Black Learning channel right after this on YouTube. And we're going to try to make sure that we share it around, because we want people to get back with us, get back to us, you know, give us not only your opinions, give us your energy, your Blacktricity. Let's connect. So Dr. Chenzerad, Mary, anybody, quick statements before Baba Kili absolutely closes us out?
African women lead. Two things in Ma'at. You know, let us move forward so that we truly restore African sovereignty, African fundamentalism, because we know that our ancestral original people are first.
Yes, Ashe.
Ashe.
Mary?
No, that's great. I'm good.
Okay, Baba Kili?
Celebrating 100 years of the Universal Negro Improvement Association's African Communities League's Declaration of the Negro Rights is truly been an honor. And the biggest honor is that what we're doing now will be recorded in history, and it will be there as we move forward. And as we move forward, we will continue to build. The Universal Negro Improvement Association African Community League, RLC 2020, is working diligently to build an economical stream so that we can look at conditions of our people and work to change them. We're looking to deal with the political stream so that we can participate in the political conversations worldwide. We're looking at international situations so we can address them internationally. And we have two of the most powerful voices I know internationally, and that is in Dr. Chenzera and Professor David Horn. You see, this isn't about just us. It's about us, a race that spread around the world, demanding of this world our right to freedom. But we will not only demand it, we will ensure it, because we are prepared, as our ancestors were, to guarantee it with our blood, with our sweat, and our commitment. And you notice I didn't say tears. I didn't say tears because it's our commitment to the liberation of African people all over the world. One God,
One God,
one aim,
One
one
aim,
aim.
one destiny.
one destiny. Yay, 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 Bo.
African Independence Day.
Yes, sir.
Happy-
Yes.
Right.